In a one-on-one interview with CBN News, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy says he's counting on President-elect Donald Trump to stand strong with his country. That's even though Trump has said Ukraine can probably expect less aid from the U.S. when he takes office.
Well, now Zelenskyy is making moves to gain more international support. Recently, he explained his goals to CBN's John Jessup in Kyiv.
Ukraine's wartime president, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, entered the world stage through a chain of events that led to the impeachment of an American president, and again in 2022 when Russia launched its full-scale invasion. Now, after nearly 3 years of fighting, he hopes to bring the war to an end as President-elect Donald Trump seeks to usher in a new political world order. In Kyiv, our cameras caught President Zelenskyy thanking battle-scarred soldiers at a military prayer breakfast. Back at his office, we discussed a range of topics, including peace talks with Putin, his desire to join NATO, and how Donald Trump's re-election in the U.S. is changing the course of Europe's largest land war since World War II. President Zelenskyy, thank you so much for making time for the Christian Broadcasting Network. But one of the things that I've been struck by as we've been here in Ukraine, talking to members of parliament, talking to religious leaders, and even, ordinary people, is how frequently people are discussing peace. Has that changed because of the dynamics of President Trump being elected?
First of all, people in Ukraine wanted peace always. When full-scale invasion started, people had no other way as to take weapons because their children were killed. And I'm quite sure I do not want your countries and our neighbors in the United States, I do not want you to have war. But if that happens, you would do the same. Ukraine is a very peaceful country and, by the way, very believing nation. You know that even the majority of evangelicals are here in Ukraine. Our Council of Churches is the biggest one. People of different faiths, different religions, but they are very much believing nation. And for them, there is this hope that Trump has this position as a strong president. That is what is coming across. And I think that Putin understands strength only. So then he would see that there is this strong president, strong country standing with Ukraine, and then we can achieve peace through strength.
How will negotiating for peace with Trump back in the White House be different than the current relationship?
I think we will be able to understand one another, and I think that with this new president of the United States, we are siding together. He does want to end this war, and we Ukrainians really want to end that war as well. And he understands that America cannot lose. America cannot come across as weak. If evil is not placed to where it belongs, then it will be examples to other authoritarian regimes that are watching.
Mr. President, I know that you're looking for some assurances from NATO. I think one of the terms that's used is the NATO umbrella. Your critics would say that that's not going to happen. So what do you mean when you say security assurances under a NATO umbrella?
When we are talking about a model that would disable people coming to your land with weaponries and border protection, then we are talking the only available model, working model, at least among the NATO countries, because they are not in war, praise God. Praise God that they do not have that war, because it is suffering. So we do believe those guarantees, NATO umbrella, as I said, invitation is the step one, because that would send a very clear signal to Putin or any other aggressor, you name it, that Ukraine is going to be a NATO member.
Some estimates, the official count, I believe, is about 20,000 Ukrainian children who've been forcibly moved from Ukraine to Russia. Some numbers say as many as hundreds of thousands. What is the priority in getting them back? Where do they factor into the equation of peace talks?
Children, that's very difficult to come back. How do we bring military people? Even that is difficult. Sometimes we can bring back civilians, and we have some tools to do that. Now, when it comes to children, that's very difficult. Why? Because we cannot exchange children for children. Yes, they have deported children, deported by strength. We are not capturing Russian children. We are not stealing children. We are not deporting their children. That never, ever happens.
A lot of the support that you've received, for example, funding for Ukrainian aid, came through the help of evangelical Christians. We also have seen evangelical churches in Poland help to receive a lot of Ukrainians who are fleeing, provide them with food and with clothing and other needs. How crucial has the support of evangelical Christians been to what Ukraine has been going through?
As I've told you, we have the majority of evangelicals in Europe, and their support is very important, and I want to thank them. And I want to thank all the churches, all the evangelical Christians. As I have said, we have representatives of different religions and faiths and confessions, and from the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, they were helping a lot. And you know, anywhere where Russia would come and occupy, they would ruin churches and schools. And they killed 50 priests. And what profit do they gain when they ruined over 700 church buildings? It just underlines one more time that this Russian direction, one language, one church, that's their understanding.
Well, John Jessup joins us now from our Washington bureau for more on this story. So, John, I hear Ukrainian evangelicals played a role in getting that interview. Give us the backstory.
And that's right, Gordon. The untold story in all of this since the war started is the influence, the power of Ukraine's evangelical Christians, bolstered and supported by American evangelicals as well. For me, this story goes all the way back to earlier this spring. You may recall when Mike Johnson became the speaker, he really put his speakership on the line, doing a 180. He opposed funding, war funding for Ukraine, and then when he was speaker, 6 months into his speakership, he switched. And part of that had to do with the intelligence briefings he was getting from military experts. But the untold story, the little reported story, is how evangelicals from the United States and Ukraine lobbied him to share the robust, constitutionally guaranteed religious freedom that exists in that part of Europe through Ukraine. Ukraine is considered the Bible Belt of Europe. So they played an effective role. There's a group called the Defenders of Faith and Religious Liberty in Ukraine. We've been documenting their work, their efforts over the last 9 months. They invited me to take part on this group of evangelicals and those who are part of the conservative movement to see with their own eyes and hear with their own ears what's taking place on the ground. And they asked for us to attend as journalists to observe. So we went, and Rob Allman, our VP of News, said, hey, if you're going, you might as well put in a request for an interview with the president of Ukraine. And the evangelicals in Ukraine played a big part in helping usher that request to his office.
Well, what's your sense of the spirit of the country, President Zelensky's spirit? This war seems to be going on forever. Where's their morale right now?
You know, I have to say, before talking about the sense of weariness, which is very evident, just the amount of resilience and resolve in the people that we met. We talked to people in the parliament. We got to meet with the speaker of the House. We got to meet with the majority leader and Christians who are playing a part, the faith community. There is a tremendous amount of resolve. Right now, though, if we're being realistic, there's also a tremendous amount of weariness, as you just stated. The war is on the cusp of being 3 years old now. And, you know, meeting with Zelensky, I found him to be a very serious, intense, person, and you could feel the weight of the moment. He is certainly a man on mission. He has his critics and he has his supporters. I think within Ukraine, people generally are supporting his effort to lead the nation, even though his support has deteriorated some in the last 3 years. But overall, I sense the weariness, an incredible burden. He's a man of the moment trying to fight what he's describing as evil. This is a fight of good versus evil. And again, an incredible weight or mantle of weight that's on his shoulders.
Well, I would encourage him to continue. It seems that, just looking at it strategically, the allies of Russia in this, particularly the Iranians, have literally been dismantled over the last 12 months. And then Russia, you can't view it any other way. They were defeated in Syria. They weren't able to maintain Assad in power. And now they're having to rely on North Korean troops to continue the war. Isn't that same weariness now setting in on the Russian side? And on top of the weariness, I would imagine their economy's in shambles trying to keep this war effort going for now almost 3 years.
You're absolutely right, Gordon. This is a pivotal moment. The things that we've witnessed in the last several days, looking at what's happened in Syria, looking at Russia as and troops, some 10 to 13,000 North Korean troops to bolster their military effort. It is a pivotal moment. What is at stake here for the Ukrainians, though, is it's been a war of attrition. Just this week, the president of Ukraine has acknowledged about 43,000 Ukrainians in their casualty count. It's not a number that they've been really enthusiastic to go public with, but he just released those figures. The figures in Russia are way higher, hundreds of thousands. But the fact of the matter is that this war has dragged on. They don't have the munitions. They don't have soldiers to fight the war. So they're looking for a way to end it reasonably, peacefully. The two words that I continually hear from the Ukrainians is they want a just and lasting peace, a just peace that looks at trying to salvage what's been lost. Russia has gained about 20% of land territory in Ukraine since the start of the war. They don't want to lose the land, but for them, what's more important is a lasting peace, a peace that guarantees that once Russia leaves or there's a ceasefire, that they will not come back in. And that peace isn't simply about land, Gordon. It's really about their identity. Everything clicked for a lot of the people in the group that I talked to afterwards, after attending the military prayer breakfast last Friday. For those who intellectually understood what was at stake, there was an emotional connection after watching Ukrainians join together in their national anthem, after seeing singers in their traditional garb. They began to understand that this is not just about land, it's about identity, it's about heritage, it's about culture, and that's really what they're trying to preserve more so than land.
Well, it seems to me that he's eager to swap, if you will, and your question about the return of Ukrainian children, I think, really gave insight. His response was, "I don't have any Russian children to trade with," and so it just seemed to be a disconnect. He seems to be willing to trade, and would that be land for peace? I guess we'll see. What message would you have for the incoming administration? What should be the foreign policy position of the United States in this?
Well, I'll share what the position of some of the folks who attended. Again, the people who were on this trip were members of the conservative movement, members of the evangelical movement, from think tanks. You had military experts. You had religious institutions who were represented, and a former member of Congress. I think for the most part, you didn't have champions for Ukraine, but after leaving, they became convinced that what was at stake is something so extremely important for the future of not only Europe, but for the future of the world. I think that the message that they would give is that this is worth the fight. That it's bigger than just one country. It is more about the trying to stop the advance of what they see as evil in Russia, as it's personified by Vladimir Putin, but also to guarantee freedom across Europe and around the world. Again, they keep saying that, they keep making the point that Ukraine is the Bible Belt of Europe, and that it is the country that has one of the strongest, most robust, constitutionally guaranteed religious freedom laws in that part of Europe. So I think what they would say is to the administration is to continue to support Ukraine. There are a lot of questions about funding and unlimited funding, but they would say that the fight is worth it.
All right, John, thank you so much for the interview, and thank you for your insights. For you at home, I'd encourage you to take a long look at this. At the start of this war, I said this is the end of the Russian civilization, that their attempts, Putin's attempts to try to reestablish a Soviet empire is now gone, because it's clear that this expansion is just not going to work. And Ukrainians had a whole lot more resolve than Russia ever counted on. We need to see this through. At the same time, if this triggers some kind of nuclear war, that is absolutely horrific for the whole world. So it's a very delicate line to walk and a balancing act, but we need to stand with Ukraine at the end of the day.